Hello friends, welcome to Insights ICANN Initiative. In today's video, we are going to cover following these 5 topics. Before we discuss all these 5 topics, first we will try to understand what is the theme of the day. Today's theme of the day is international groupings, which is under IR. When you are reading the international relations especially, so you can try to understand international organization with this perspective. When you are reading the international organizations especially, try to understand how many member countries are there and in which year that organization was established and what are the main objective of that organization. Then where is the headquarters, special declaration or any fund related to that organization. For example, in today's video we will discuss about loss and damage fund. In that way, various funds and their association with the international organization. Then which international grouping in news recently. For example, G20 meeting held in India. Okay, by the way, tell me students, next G20 meeting is going to be held in which country? Which nation is going to hold next G20 summit? Now, on this particular area, we will try to understand some model questions. First question, consider the following: Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, Missile Technology Control Regime, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. India is a member of which of the above? So, in which of the above India is member? So, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, MTCR, it is one of the arms control regime, and Shanghai Cooperation Organization, one of the economic organization. So, India is a member of all these 3 organizations. So, this is how your approach should be. When you are reading any international organization, you have to first check whether India is a member in it or not. Then you have to check the following things. Then we will look at one more model MCQ. Which of the following is not a member of Gulf Cooperation Council? So, which of the following is not a member of GCC? That is Iran. Iran is not a member of Gulf Cooperation Council. This is one more MCQ. Now, let us see today's video's topics. G7, Loss and Damage Fund, Strait of Malacca, Sunda Strait, Project Kusha. First one is G7. You know the students, G7 is in news, especially Brazil. Okay, Brazil as well as some of the G7 nations, they made few comments individually related to G7. The first thing is G7 nations recently they advocated for a peace between Israel as well as this Palestine. In that context, G7 nations are in news. G7 foreign ministers they held a meeting in Tokyo. They called for humanitarian pause in fighting in Gaza. Humanitarian pause in Gaza. That means give some break, okay, on humanitarian grounds. So many people, children, they are losing their life. So on those grounds, try to give some break so that human loss can be reduced. That is the appeal from G7. In this context, we will try to understand some basic information regarding the G7. G7, it is an intergovernmental organization of leading industrialized nations formed in 1975. Initially, it was formed as G6. Later, Canada added into this organization. From there onwards, it became G7. Of course, Russia is also used to be a member in the G7. At that time, it called as G8. But when Russia occupied Crimea in 2014, at that time, Russia expelled out of the G8. So now again, G7 was reverted back. Member countries in the G7, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, UK and USA. Generally, annual meetings of G7 happens on rotational basis. Last time G7 meeting, India was an invited member into the last time G7 meeting. And tell me students, where was the last time G7 summit was held? Last G7 summit was held in which country? Generally, G7 meeting, they discuss a wide range of issues such as global economic governance, international security and energy policy. Next, formally, it was G8, like I said earlier. From that, Russia was suspended due to Russia annexation of Crimea in 2014. The origin of G7, it lie in the oil shocks of 1973. To overcome from this kind of financial crisis, some of the developed nations, they decided to come together and form an organization. Initially 6 nations, they came together and formed an organization. Later it was added by Canada. So G7 came into existence in 1976. So that was about the first topic, G7. And the topic 2, loss and damage fund. You know students, climate change. You can do 2 things regarding the climate change. One is prevention of the global prevention of global warming. So, or like reducing the global warming. One is the preventive strategy. The other one is when there are situations which cannot be prevented, the only solution is adapting to the change, adapting to the climate change, adaptation to the climate change. There, loss and damage control, loss and damage fund comes into handy. Loss and damage control, this loss and damage fund, actually it was a proposal from the least developed countries. They are advocating that even though they are not contributed to the climate change a lot, they are hugely suffered because of the climate change. So, because of that, they are arguing that there must be one loss and damage control fund. From that, the money can be used towards these least developing countries to adapt towards the climate change. Now, for the first time, the funding mechanism is going to be established. Actually, regarding this fund, already in the COP27 meeting, it was discussed. COP27 meeting was held in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. An international panel on loss and damage due to the climate crisis, they agreed for what? Operationalizing a global fund. A global fund is going to be operationalized. Of course, US has objected to this outcome, but irrespective of that, very soon one fund is going to be created. The IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, they define loss and damage as it refers to the economic loss and non-economic loss due to climate change, which includes it may be the slow events or it may be the extreme events in developing countries as well as underdeveloped countries. These kinds of changes are destructive in nature, they are irreversible, so they cannot be addressed by the mitigation and adaptation. They can be only addressed by loss and damage fund. Okay. Next, this refers to negative consequences that arises from the unavoidable risk of the climate change. Like I said earlier, non-preventable climate change activities like rising sea levels, prolonged heat waves, acidification of the sea, and extreme events such as bushfires, species extinction, and crop failure. So, when these kind of irreversible climate actions are happening, to protect from these activities, this loss and damage fund can be useful. Evolution. The least developing countries, they brought up this demand in 1991, and one of the least developed countries, okay, was Vanuatu. Vanuatu representing the alliance of small island states. Alliance of small island states, they demanded. This least developing countries group, they demanded for the establishment of this loss and damage fund. The Warsaw International Mechanism and Loss and Damage, it was found in 2013. From there onwards, gradually the momentum increased towards this particular fund. And this loss and damage fund mainly it was discussed in COP27 summit. In COP26 it was discussed, whereas in COP27 they decided to go for this funding. A coalition of 134 developing countries and China, they proposed the loss and damage financial facility, and it was approved in COP27. This COP27 meeting was held in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. About the loss and damage fund, this agreement was concluded in Abu Dhabi. You know that COP28 meeting is going to be held in Abu Dhabi. In Abu Dhabi, in COP28, it is going to be one of the main issue regarding the climate change. Like I said earlier, it is going to be discussed in COP28. Next, who will the source of the funding? Who will give the money? The contribution of the money, it may be from the voluntary contribution from various countries and NGOs, and it may be some of the mandatory contribution from the developed countries as well. That is about topic number 2. The third topic is about Malacca Strait. So recently it is in news that if China controlling the Taiwan, then the options at the Malacca Strait to countries like India, they are going to be limited options. So because we are heavily dependent on the Malacca Strait. Strait is a narrow water body which connects two large water bodies. Okay, Malacca Water Strait, it connects Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean, and it separates Malaysia from Indonesian islands. Now, and of course, Strait of Malacca is one of the busiest sea trade route. Let's see, there are limitations to what India can do in the event of US-China conflict over Taiwan. You know that both USA and China, they are trying to control over the Pacific nation. Okay, especially China is trying to control over the Pacific nation by claiming South China Sea and East China Sea, whereas America trying to revert back to China's dominance in the form of Quads and Malabar Navy exercise and India-Pacific Economic Forum in that way. The Strait of Malacca is a narrow stretch of water, 930 kilometers in length, which is between the Malay Peninsula, that is Malaysia side, and the Indonesian islands of Sumatra. It is one of the main shipping channel between the Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean, and one of the most important and busiest shipping lane. So obviously, if China get control over the Taiwan, India is going to be affected, and options before India are also very limited in nature. This Malacca Strait, it connects Andaman Sea with the South China Sea, Pacific Ocean. The shortest sea route between the Middle East and East Asia, Middle East, okay, towards Saudi Arabia and all these countries, to the East Asia, it is going to be one of the very significant routes. Shortest sea route as well. Through this corridor, around 60% of the world's this maritime trade occurs, 60%, and it's the main source of the oil supply towards the East Asian nations, especially People's Republic of China as well as Japan. Because of this reason, even India is also trying to improve its presence in the Indian Ocean in the form of regularly participating in the Quad, as well as constructing various ports in countries like Sri Lanka. Now the fourth topic, recently earthquake activity and volcanic eruption observed near the Sunda Strait. We will discuss about the Sunda Strait. Here the Sunda Strait, it present between the Indonesia's Java as well as Sumatra Islands. The Sunda Strait connects Java Sea with the Indian Ocean. Okay, now we will see further details regarding the Sunda Strait. Sunda Strait is a waterway that connects Java Sea with Indian Ocean, and it is an important passage that links the Indian Ocean with the East Asia. Indian Ocean with the East Asia, the Sunda Strait, and is located between the Indonesia's Java as well as Sumatra Islands. And here the volcanic activity is also very high because this particular region is very near to the Pacific Ring of Fire. Now the last fifth topic, Project Kusha. This Project Kusha is like the development of the anti-missile defense system, which is India's version. Okay, now we are dependent on S-400 from Russia regarding the anti-missile defense system. So this is a kind of indigenously developed anti-missile system. So now we will try to understand what is the range. And one more thing you have to understand, anti-missile defense system is nothing but if any missile is attacking towards India, this particular system will identify the missile, and before it hits the ground, this particular system will launch the missiles and it will neutralize the incoming missile. That is about the anti-missile defense system. The interceptor capability of the India's developed long range surface to air. This anti-missile defense system is always surface to air missile system. It developed by DRDO under the ambitious project Kusha. It can be compared with Russia's S-400 air defense system. Project Kusha, India's long range air defense system, and titled as Project Kusha, developed by DRDO. It is capable of detecting and destroying enemy projectile, including cruise missiles, stealth fighter jets and drones. Project Kusha enhances India's air defense capabilities, so we can secure our airspace. And at the heart of this project is about 3 long range interceptor missiles. Interceptor missiles means missiles which can identify the incoming missiles and neutralize those incoming missiles. They are known as interceptor missiles. These missiles are engineered to possess the ranges of 150, 250 and 350 kilometers. By that, they can provide comprehensive shield against aerial threats. That means they can neutralize enemy missiles even at the distance of 350 kilometers. So this can provide a comprehensive protection from Pakistan side. Very important development. Let's see, after further development, this project can be implemented very soon. Now we'll see yesterday's video question. Which of the following is the national aquatic animal of India? Gangetic dolphin. Now let's see today's question. In which one of the following groups are all the 4 countries are members of G20? Which group of countries are members of G20? Mains question. In light of the G7 countries that have recently committed to decarbonize their electricity by 2035, discuss the main opportunities. Discuss opportunities and challenges for India in achieving the decarbonization of electricity sector. So, what are the challenges and opportunities in terms of reducing carbon footprint in the electricity? This is about mains answer writing. Now, let us revise quickly. In this particular current issues video, we discussed about following 5 topics such as G7, Loss and Damage Fund, Strait of Malacca, Sunda Strait and Project Kusha. And this is the detailed analysis regarding today's current issues. Thank you.